Hard, heavy, and hair. Badass music for badass listeners. With Pariah Burke.
There once was a talented melodic thrash and power metal band from Southern Oregon that was cutting their own path to success. Unfortunately, they tripped on a root and stepped off the path, and they've been lost in the woods for 25 years. This year, they found their way back to the trail, and now they're poised to pick up where they left off, taking a quarter-century-old demo tape of songs so good it became a fascination for collectors as far away from Oregon as Germany, and applying modern music and mastering techniques, the cult favorite band Emissary has reunited for success. And they've asked me and the Hard, Heavy, and Hair show to host the exclusive worldwide premiere of their next song, a track that won't be available until they drop their first official album in 25 years, just before the world turns 2022. I spoke with the driving force members of Emissary, then and now, about the song, the new album, and just what the hell happened to get them off track for so damn long. Jim Harris, Tim Dahlen of Emissary, thank you very much for joining me. Welcome to the Hard, Heavy, and Hair show.
Awesome. Thank you. Definitely. Thank you for having us.
So, Emissary.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us what you two play in the band, or your roles in the band?
Sure. Well, I would be. I don't like the term lead guitar, but I guess I'm lead guitar and do half of the writing with Jim.
Okay.
And a lot of vocals as well. His voice is very recognizable in the Emissary sound. And and I'm the lead singer. So I'm the front man and I guess if I was gonna say the class clown, but I think that's actually Tim.
I'll take that.
And who else was in the band?
Well,
we've got let's talk over each other.
No, you go. You go, brother.
Paul and Ricky, and then our bass player is Peter Sean Kinney.
Oh, you're freezing up a bit, Jim.
Freezing up, Jimbo. You know what? I'll jump in real quick.
Okay.
Eric Hoover is our drummer. He was our original drummer, and then later Jim did play on some of the stuff later when Eric left to join like a traveling, I was going to say circus. That's not right. A touring cover band. You know, he did the USO thing and went to army bases and did all that stuff, made good money. So he left the band. And then our original bass player's name is Jeremy Sipple, but he was replaced later by Peter Sean Kenny, who's in the band now. And then we have a gentleman named Charlie Francipani. I would say that it's Italian, and he lives up in Buffalo, Wyoming, and he was in a band called Surrender to Eden before, and I met him on the road. I was in another band, met him on the road in New York. We toured together, and then he ended up, I thought he was a good player. He was kind of like a George Lynch guy, and I was like, dude, this guy's really good. So when it was time for us to get another guitar player, I was checking on that guy, and he's originally from New York. So we got people spread out all over. Eric, our drummer's in Alaska at the moment too, and I'm in Denver. So
wow.
That's us five. Yeah.
Are you recording remotely? Are you exchanging digital tracks?
Yeah, we're doing the stems. I use Persona Studio One, and so does Jim. And I'm doing all the guitar tracks, which are a lot in metal. So a lot of people know. I'm doing a lot of guitar, all the guitars and all my vocals here in Denver, and then I send them on to our producer and mixer engineer guy, and then Jim is the vocal master. So I'll send him my vocals first and let him fix them up so that everything matches and we both end at the same spot and stuff like that, just to make life easier on Doug Hill, our producer guy. And and then Jim's doing his stuff in Medford, and then he'll have Pete either come over to his house or Pete will go actually into the studio. He has the benefit of living in the same area as the actual in-house studio thing. yeah, he'll do that. And then, right, you know, our drummer will send me MIDI mapped out tracks of his drums, and then I will throw them in, and I'll do all the quantizing because I'm all mental with everything being super tight and perfect and stuff. So I'll quantize it and edit whatever little things, because when he sends me stuff, he's using a different program. So when he sends it over to me, sometimes doesn't read out as well as I'd like it to. So I'll fix some stuff up, and then we go from there.
Yeah.
Okay. And just to be clear, Jim's in Medford, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
So when Tim said Medford, I just wanted listeners to know what state.
Sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is where we were originally stationed. This is where the band came together, and you know, and just so there's no confusion, you know, this band was pretty much started from scratch with Tim and myself, but I reused a band name and logo and some lyrics from an old garage band I had back in '89. So it's kind of a Dahlen situation. You know how there was a Dahlen before there was a Dahlen? Yeah. But nobody gives a shit about you know, that stuff from '76. But it was still, you know, it kind of gets tacked on to people say, oh, the band was formed in '76. It's like, not really. I mean, the real Dahlen started when George Lynch joined the band, right? I mean,
George Lynch and Jeff Pilson were just they're the songwriting force of Dahlen.
Right. So there was some stuff before that. So in our situation, I had a band in Vegas with the same name and some lyrics, you know, garage band for about a year, and about 100 different people in the lineup, you know, over the course of my senior year of high school. And, you know, and it wasn't that great, but there was some promise. I think it was a good name and logo and the lyrics. So when Tim and I met up in '93, we put this band together, and I just reused some of that stuff. So when people see that, oh, originally formed in '89 or whatever, you know, it's like, it's the same thing as the Dawkins thing being originally from '76. It's like, not really. I call it the pilot episode. You know, it's before the real season started.
Yeah. And I forced him to use the logo because I was like, dude. And then, you know, once over the years, it's just really just been cleaned up a little bit. It really hasn't changed. The integrity of the logo is exactly the same. And there's nothing wrong that if you make the logo yellow and you throw it on a black shirt, that it looks a little Batman-y. There's nothing wrong with that. That's actually really good stuff, because people are like, that's kind of recognizable. I don't know why it's recognizable. Just like, you know, you go listen to some Zeppelin songs and you'll hear all these other bands before them that wrote half their songs. No, I'm just kidding about that. But familiarity isn't a horrible thing, you know? So I saw that logo and I was like, dude, and then now with all the really heavy bands, and they're like, seriously, they're chicken scratch logos that, you know, I know you have to do that. It's like, we've got to make sure nobody can read this, because then we're the coolest. And I'm not even joking there. I'm just like, that has to be the thought behind it, because I want people to know our name. I think our logo stands up with all the great logos. I got to be honest. Now we just got to put the music behind it, and that's great. But the logo was something that I was like, that'll do it. And it's very metal, and you can read it. So I'm pretty darn proud of the you know, the marketing and the branding of this band. It's exciting. It's exciting to have that. And so I told Jim when I saw it, I was like, no, dude, stop. We thought of some other names, and then we're like, no, dude, that's kind of, no, dude. Yeah. That's kind of, that's it. That's us. And let's go. So
there's been other bands called Emissary since, you know, that formed whatever after, you know, my original project. And that's why we kind of tack on the original Emissary onto the name a lot of times. So people don't get it mixed up with the 700 other, you know, emissaries that did one demo, you know, around the same time.
Yeah. Okay. So, and everything I'm seeing is you guys. When I look up Emissary band, everything I'm seeing is you. Yep. The original Emissary reforms after 25 years, which I want to ask you about. Yeah. So this is good. And you even got some coverage on Metal Addicts this past spring. That's good. Right on. All right. So let me ask you, what happened 25 years ago? Why, you know, give me the history of Emissary.
So I'll start with that and say you're about the same age as us, I think. We're all 30 somethings, right? Huh?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Celebrating anniversaries of our birthdays, not birthdays anymore.
Yes. So there was a thing that happened in the Pacific Northwest. I won't say the name of it, but it was something where hard rock bands started, wearing horizontally striped sweaters and wallet chains, and all the songs were about, how sad they were and their heroin addiction, and
Rhymes with plunge.
And how desperate they were to die at 27, like Hendrix and Joplin and all them. Yeah,
sure. Yeah. So that's in a nutshell what happened. We formed early '93, and in Southern Oregon, there was nobody else was doing what we were doing. We came out kind of with this sort of Anthrax, Metal Church, I don't know, Armored Saint, whatever, like old school kind of classic power metal. Our business card said power metal on it. This is before the term was attached to Halloween and all the European power metal, hints of thrash, melodic thrash. And we were really, became the biggest original heavy metal band in Southern Oregon.
Really quickly. Yeah, very quickly.
So 3 years of that. And then the last year or so, it just seemed like we kept getting booked on shows with bands that sounded like Smashing Pumpkins or Nirvana or Jane's Addiction or whatever, was kind of happening at the time. And we found ourselves a little bit lost, going, we were starting to abandon our original sound and incorporate more modern elements. And it was a little bit directionless there in '96. And we were shopping the project, and it was to the point where they didn't even want to put the word metal on a show. If we were playing a show, they would be like, "Oh, an aggressive rock show." It just became such a curse word, and that sort of, I would say forced us to reevaluate, like if we were going to try to keep continuing on as a classic, US power metal band, or if we were going to try to buy into what the skateboard kids with wallet chains were buying. And it was inevitable, I'd say, that we disband at that point.
And it definitely made sense. I mean, for us, I think we were like, okay, how are we going to get another foothold somewhere within all of this? Our biggest show ended up being, it's funny. And really, when you look at it, it's interesting. Our biggest show ever was in front of a couple thousand people, I think. How many people were there? No, not the Cherry Poppin' Daddies, 1,500 maybe.
It was 1,500 people easily. I mean, because they sold 1,500 tickets and then they let people in at the door. So who knows?
It was like
wall.
Felt like an arena when we were playing that show. Yeah. But that show, we played with the Cherry Poppin' Daddies. And
I have to stop you there. I have to ask, because Jim had told me about that, and this was not a bill that I expected to see Emissary on. Was the Cherry Poppin' Daddies? How did that go?
Well, I mean, we were too big to kind of ignore, I would say, in the Valley. Yet, of course, the spread of grunge, and things are localized, like an epicenter. We were in Southern Oregon, so we were still kind of in the Pacific Northwest. So, of course, all the kids got into that, that stuff. And then there were the bands like Sweaty Nipples, they were like, they're a Portland band, right? So they were a mix between, they were more silly heavy rock. So
punk and funk and
so
almost like a scatterbrain.
That fit more in that kind of genre. So there were some bands like that, but the Daddy show, and I'll go back to Jim in a second, but the funny part with that is we did a huge show with Dahlen that was amazing. And that was probably about a quarter of the amount of people showed up for that as the Daddy show. And that right there is a testament to what was happening at the time with music. But to actually getting on that show, I don't remember. Jim will tell you right now.
Yeah. So the promoter was, I worked at a record shop for a couple decades and ended up actually owning it there for a few years here in the Rogue Valley. It's called Music Head, and one of the guys that worked there at the shop he was a local promoter. He booked our very first show in his backyard on his.
Tom, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So Tom, this guy Tom put the show together, and of course he said, you guys are added value. He's like, it's just no question that Emissary should be on this show. And I was like, really, with the daddies? So it was 4 bands. Yeah, he put his own band on. It was a band called LMNOP, and then we played, and then a band called Sideshow Bob, who was basically, what's that Mike Patton band that's not Faith No More, but the other one?
Mr. Bungle meets Tool almost is what they were, right. But yeah.
So there was, and then the daddies came out with their horns and were doing all this swing ska stuff. So it was an eclectic kind of show, and there were pockets of people. You could tell the headbangers, when we went on, there was a little mosh pit going on, and you could tell the other people that were back in the beer garden going, oh man, wait till the headbangers get done, because I don't want to hear all this. I want to, the people that were waiting to hear Drunk Daddy, and the daddies came out from backstage when we were playing, because we did a medley of some old 80s pop songs and played a metal style. Nice. And Tim, were we doing the medley at that time, or was it just Careless Whisper?
I think we did the whole thing, but I think we ended it like we used to with all of Careless Whisper. So we went into like Candle in the Wind and sure. Eurythmics stuff and some Pink Floyd. That wasn't Pink Floyd in that one, but and then we went into Careless Whisper and did our version of that. And they liked
so
it.
While we're playing that, the guys from the daddies come out from backstage and are standing there with like excited looks on their face, because they hear this metal band that's been up there, thrashing for a half an hour, and we're ending with, I'm never gonna dance again, and they're like awesome. Singing along, and we got off stage, they're like, you guys are awesome, that was so cool that you did that was awesome. So
bet that felt good.
Yeah, it was awesome. And there were people that were there that I would say that definitely got it, and there were people there that didn't, that were just like, okay, yeah. I mean, we certainly didn't get booed.
Yeah, we have some really cool video clips of that from the side of the stage when we went into. I think we have some more video, but I have one specific video where we went into probably our heavier, fastest song, and you could see kind of the pit form, and then when one of our road crew guys panned out, it literally looked like a full arena, and it's one of my favorite clips, because it was like, and it's hard to remember back then that feeling of that kind of a crowd, because it's so few and far between after that. But I will say that to jump into kind of where we were trying to go, it naturally came to us that if we're going to change and bend a little bit, let's bend Pantera wise. Let's go into some different timings, and let me slide my chords around. Let's do that kind of stuff to try, and because Pantera was the metal that people wanted, that or like Tool, and we weren't going to do any Tool stuff. So it was definitely the way so we wrote a few songs and went to the studio. We even have a couple of those on record, on tape that we recorded, but none of it ever felt like that there's the sweet spot of that song. It was kind of forced. And then it was just, again, we were changing our logo to this like lowercase typewriter type look inside of a mustard colored oval, because we're just like, what can we do to still be a band? It was so hard to try and, what is going to make these kids be excited again? Because it's kind of like when you get too much too soon, and then the rest is kind of downhill, I guess, or uphill, or however you want to call it. But we did our first show, we promoted it. I was like, hey, I can promote a show. Let's do this. Let's get some bands to open for us, and let's have them pay us each $300. We'll give them 100 tickets. They'll sell them for $6 a piece, since they think they're all such great bands and can sell so many tickets. They'll make $300 profit, and then we'll rent out this place, and we'll go get some guys from the local bars to work the door and bounce. And then we'll get the local superstar cover band guys to come and bring their PA. We'll pay them, and they'll run sound, because they had a really good sound system. And we put on our first show at a place called Remix. And I tell you, we sold it out. In fact, way more people showed up than we're supposed to. We made around 1,500 just door tickets. And we ended up, we're like, wow, this was amazing. And a huge pit. And it was just, it's the dream come true of shows. And it was probably our first big show of any kind that we decided, let's put it on ourselves. This town could use a show like this. And it was amazing. And we did it again later. I don't think it was as grandiose or whatever as the first one, but we had to do a few things ourselves. And being attached to, then later getting some shows and being attached to bands like Overkill and stuff like that was really exciting for us. Doing a little touring down to San Francisco and playing a club that Death Angel and Metallica and Exodus all the time, and all of these great thrash bands that we were inspired by used to play. These were all really big treats for us to be able to do, but we pushed ourselves and we did everything we could under the restraints of metal, and then later being called like butt rock or whatever the kids thought was really cute to do to call us. And then there became some negativity and some negative feelings between some bands here and there. They're like, oh, we don't want to play with them, or they don't want to play with us. But sure. It was definitely, the movement out of the Pacific Northwest definitely hurt a lot of people, because if you took your music, if it had to do with partying, having fun, girls, and enjoying life, it was not something that anybody wanted to hear anymore. They wanted to, and Alice in Chains is in my top 3 favorite bands of all time. So, and I consider
it's not like
them
the
real
the
one.
90s brought only shit music in. I mean, we like some of the stuff that was coming in at that time. I mean, even Soundgarden had some solid stuff.
Definitely.
But it seemed like such a huge change so fast. As you recall, it was just kind of like, anybody that was there remembers that it's like Warrant was at the top of the charts, and then suddenly it was Alice in Chains, and now all the Warrants of the world are trying to make their Alice in Chains record, and those.
Correct. Yeah.
I think that some of that worked, but most of those bands, it didn't work. It seemed ridiculous watching a band like Slaughter or Winger or whatever try to make a Pearl Jam record. So when we started writing, going, hey, how do we incorporate some of this modern stuff in? I think that to the people listening, it was like, oh, this is the riff where the 80s guys went, hey, how do we get a little bit of Alice in Chains in there? How do we get a little bit of Pantera in there? How do we get a little bit of
Drop D and then bands like Skid Row doing their Pantera album it's the same other way, aside from just the grunge. Even Kiss jumped into the mix, which they didn't even need to do. It's like, dude, just keep playing Love Gun and Detroit Rock City and you guys are fine. Don't and actually some of those songs are good on that album. Sorry. Yeah. But
no, Paul Stanley said, he goes, that was Gene. We're trying to make them heavier. And he said, we're not going to out Metallica because there's already a Metallica. Kiss does Kiss well. Kiss doesn't do Metallica well.
Yeah. No, true. And seeing some of those bands later, I know I'm a fan of so much different stuff, but definitely in the 80s, I think Rat, Y&T for sure was my favorite band by far. But then Rat was another band that I thought, dude. But then seeing these bands go from arenas to clubs, and then luckily in my life, way later in my life, I got to play with these bands at different times and play in smaller places with them. But it was really strange to see. And now, lucky, jump on the nostalgia train. Now these bands are back playing the arenas and playing the, certain bands like Kiss and Rush, and certain bands didn't ever have to do that. They didn't have to go to the theater size places. They could still hold their own because they had the fan base to do it. Rush still sold out. No matter what period Rush was in, they were still selling out arenas all the time. And they didn't have to kind of do that downgrade. I remember seeing Blue Oyster Cult on a flyer once at like a bar, and it was the first time I saw anything like that, probably in the early 90s, and I was like,
oh wow,
Blue Oyster Cult. And I'm like, is it a new pretend band, or is it a really BOC that used to play the Cow Palace in San Francisco, and so
it's a Wednesday and they're opening for Candlebox.
Yeah, right. No, So I think we did our best to stick together. And then I just think if you want to maneuver in the music business, I think certain guys get desperate and they feel like they got to try this, try that, and then move on, try something else. But it happens to all of us.
So why is now the right time to come back?
I'll give this to Jimbo.
So it's kind of this is all kind of a happy accident. So Tim was active in a project. Tim and Pete both, the two of them, had a project called Sonic Octane, and as you know, I was in a band called Silent Storm, and we were kind of each of us sort of making our moves, and we hadn't really played together in a long time. And then I played for a little while with a band called Cruella in Portland, and from Portland, excuse me. So I was in that band for about 8 months, and we played, I don't know, 3 or 4 times live, and opened for YNT, and played Northwest Metal Fest up in Seattle, and had some fun. And during that time, the owner of Cruella's record label that put out the vinyl of the Vengeance Is Mine, a guy named James Beach, was putting together a book called Rusted Metal, and it is it's a history of the heavy metal and hard rock music scene in the Pacific Northwest. And there, Timmy's got it right there in his hand.
Oh, right on.
It's dictionary size.
It's this beautiful coffee table book. And so I met James through being in Cruella, and everybody was always referring to me as Jimbo from Emissary. And finally he's putting finishing touches on it, and he asked me, he said, "Hey, did you guys ever play up here in the Pacific Northwest?" I said, "Yeah, we played." We left town quite a few times and ventured out to, and to me, I'm like a little bit directionless. So I'm like, "Yeah, we played Mount Shasta and Eugene and Springfield," and naming places. I'm like, "Yeah, we played Portland a couple times." He said, "Do you have any flyers or tickets or anything left from that time?" And I said, "I think I got some stuff in a box." And he said, "If you could prove that you guys ever played up here before 1995, that ticket, look at that." We played the Roseland Theater twice in 94 and 95. Maybe they're both shows were in 94. I can't remember if we played up there 2 or 3 times. Kind of a blur. We were young, and there was a lot of MGD in our system, amongst other things. But it was just he said you guys deserve, belong in this book. If you were part of the scene up here and you asked who we played with, blah 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 blah. So he asked for a bio. He said, "Send me a bio and a picture, and I'll see if I can fit you guys in." And I didn't know if we were going to get in the book or not. And then the book came out, and he put a photo of us, a color photo, and the band bio that I wrote, and and he edited a little bit and said that I'm currently in the band that I also played in Cruella and have Silent Storm. So that comes out, and people online start talking about Emissary, because we're sharing it on Facebook and all of that. Right about that time, our original drummer says, COVID's happening. And
if I can interrupt for just a second, just to make this clear. So the book you're talking about, Rusted Metal, it came out exactly a year ago, November 1st, 2020.
Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I would be remiss as somebody in Portland and very involved in the Portland music scene currently if I didn't suggest everybody pick up a copy of this book. So Definitely. I'm going to put a link to it on pariahrocks.com.
Awesome.
Yeah, you can get it everywhere. I mean, you can just Google it and find it everywhere. It's something that, they're shipping out thousands and thousands of copies, all over the world. And there's bigger bands in there and all the smaller bands. And the fact that we just, were included was an honor. And on a picture,
that was crazy. 80% of the bands didn't get our picture in it, so we got super lucky.
Yeah. And that was, and so the Silent Storm train was kind of slowing down, middle of COVID. We had a year of shows fall out from underneath us, festival appearances, some tour dates, some opening slots with bigger bands. My guys were getting a little restless. They all kind of jumped ship at the same time to hook up with a band in the tribute scene, and they're doing great and playing every weekend and making money and doing what they love. And there's no hard feelings there. But it was one of those things where our album came out, and even though there was tons of promotion and we were getting good reviews all over the place, it wasn't, we couldn't go out there and get on a stage and back it up because it was in the middle of COVID. Nobody really knew what was going to happen with that, and it's still kind of that way. And I'm sure that Tim's situation was similar. Was like, okay, we got this thing, we got this vehicle, but it's idling, so that all happened right at the same time as this book came out. Our drummer gets a hold of us from a long time ago and says, hey, I got this recording studio in my house. I'd love to just re-record some of those old demos with you guys. We got all our own home recording studios. We can send the stems to each other, and he threw the idea out there and got us all back together and got us talking about it. Yeah. And it took me putting one message on Facebook and saying, hey, would anybody care if just for fun, if we re-recorded the old demos? And we immediately got a message from Underground Power Records in Germany, who said, I've got your old demos, which I didn't know that, I know there's an underground for collectors where people trade tapes and all that kind of thing. Didn't know our music had made it around the world like that. And he said, if you guys are going to record anything new, I'd love to put it out. So he was the first offer. Yep. That tape right there is that's the very, very likely that's the cassette that Helly over at Underground Power has, and said, I'll put it out on CD and vinyl. And since we announced that we were going to do that, we've gotten 3 other offers from other record deals, which of course we've turned down because we already have an agreement with Underground Power for this release. So we jumped in the studio and just finished up the new album, which is called The Wretched Masquerade. And it's basically 8 re-recordings of old demo songs. And you get the benefit of, the sort of young, vibrant Emissary songwriting, yet the, old wise Emissary, knowing how to sort of fix some things that maybe should have been fixed the first time, and appropriately release this material finally, instead of just on, cassettes on demo. Not that there's anything wrong with the 90s material. It's definitely, has an energy about it, but it's a bit raw. And we cleaned some things up and we recorded 8 songs. And then there's 2 versions of the album that are coming out. One will have a bonus disc of the old original demos cleaned up. And then you can just buy the album where it's just the single disc and it just has the 8 new recordings, or the double disc version, which is going to have a bigger booklet in it. And it's coming out on vinyl as well. CD and vinyl. Nice.
So do you think that that bonus disc, that's going to be of interest to collectors?
Yeah. As soon as we put out so now it's been 2 weeks that we've had the EP. So we released pre-released an EP with permission from our label of 3 of the new tracks, as you know, and 3 of the same songs, demo version. So it's a 6-track CD because we played some bigger shows we'll talk about in a minute, I'm sure, a few months ago, and we needed something to sell at those shows. So we got permission from our label to do that with some of the material, and we released this EP, and it went up on the New Wave of Traditional Heavy Metal Full Albums channel on YouTube. A guy named Anderson Tiago runs that. He's such a help to newer traditional heavy metal bands coming out. It's just a godsend for a lot of the newer bands that are coming out. So I just asked, he'd put some Silent Storm stuff up there. I asked him if he'd put the EP up, and within, 3 days, we had 4,500 views on it. And a lot of the comments are, man, I can't wait for this album. I hope they release a demo anthology, because it hadn't been, publicized yet that there was going to be a bonus disc. So I was like, actually, if you buy the 2-disc version, the deluxe edition, the bonus disc is in fact a demo anthology. Probably won't have all of the demos, but all the appropriate demos to go with the new album.
Yeah. Cool. And I have heard that EP. And like you were saying, the 94 demos, Silent Treatment, Crash and Burn, and Ruler of Defiance, really good songs, not as polished and professionally mixed, not as tight, not as polished and tight, I would say, as the new 2021 versions, which I really enjoy. I've been listening to it. I've really liked it. But it was very cool to hear the evolution, to hear the the old beginning, the old demo, and then what it's like finished, 25 years later.
Yeah, definitely for us too. It's a dream come true for me. I've been in a few projects since then, and I moved when I left the Rogue Valley, came to Denver in around '96, and immediately kind of jumped into the cover band thing. So I got into and it was a bigger scene out here. So it was 5 nights a week, and we would tour and travel, and I was always, there was a great cover band in Medford called Born Naked, and they were just like, to me, I was like, I had never seen a cover band when I was, back in the 90s. I was like, dude, these guys are so good. I want to do that. And I the bass player, I'm a guitar player, but I wanted to be the bass player in that band. I said, I want to be in a cover band and do what he does, sing maybe, a certain amount of the songs and play the bass. And so I actually achieved that. I moved to Denver and got into a cover band and had done that for a lot of years and was pretty successful in that here, making good money. And I was proud. I'm like, I'm playing music and making money. And always throughout all of those years, thought back to every band I've been in. And recently I'm still in a band, but it's so dormant, but a band that, we tour, we have a tour bus and do a bunch of, big shows, and we were on a bunch of big festivals and all that great stuff. But it's the Emissary stuff. I've always known that the songs were good. I of course I wrote a lot of it, so of course I'm going to think they're good, but I always thought we never wrote filler songs. I thought everyone was good. And on the YouTube channel that we're on, the New Wave of Traditional Heavy Metal YouTube channel, the likes and dislikes are around 250 likes to 7 dislikes. And that makes you feel good. There are always those people that are like, you're not Metallica. I don't like you. But I just, and
you're not
some
1991 Metallica with the Black Album. Yeah.
Well, there you go. We can be a mix between that, or at least try. But so I had always thought back to the Emissary stuff. Jim and I kind of, like a lot of bands, we weren't getting along at the end and really hadn't spoken in any depth for 25 years until I was, and actually before COVID, I remember I was in New York in the back of a cab, and I got a message from Eric, our drummer, saying, hey, what about the possibility of maybe next summer we do a reunion? Just go back home and just do a fun club date or somewhere and just do it to do it. And then the recording, he started talking about doing the recording. And I said, well, I have the ability to do that. So we can talk about that. And then as the evolution of all this happens, as Jim told you, then it turned into something where, things kept falling into place. And then things kept happening that were shocking to me. Jim was more visible in metal than I was. I was in a modern hard rock band, but he was more into that. So he understood and had more connections than I did, for sure. And then I'll pass it back to him in a second, but things started happening and people started wanting to work with us, names that I was like, and since then, I'm just, for example, Ruler of Defiance, I'll just throw this one out there, has a guitar player playing on it from one of my favorite thrash bands ever, Possessed, that I grew up loving. They just didn't hit the Metallica level, but they were early on, they were just as big as Metallica and all of those bands in the Bay Area. And I really was a big fan. And now on Ruler of Defiance, you can hear him, the guitar player that replaced Larry Lalonde a few guitar players later, was on our album. So something like that's a dream come true too. So, but Jim and I started to talk and we realized, Jim and I work well together, musically for sure. And I think we get each other mentally and emotionally where a lot of people don't get us. And so it's a natural fit. Feelings were hurt back in the late mid 90s. And we just didn't, I joined a wannabe Alice in Chains. I started an Alice in Chainsy type silver chair type band with our bass player Pete and another drummer, and that was fun. And we wrote a good album. And I was going through some stuff too. I was going through some recovery, or at least I wanted to think it was recovery on my own from some at the end of Emissary. A lot of stuff was going on, and I wasn't the healthiest guy, and definitely kind of jumped it. As we know, Alice in Chains, Lane Staley, and some of the guys from Pearl Jam and stuff had the band Mad Season, and that really strung a chord with me, and I was like, whoa. And so I that was my attempt later to write that kind of an album. So I kind of wanted to do that, and I did that, and we were getting a little bit of traction, and then I ended up moving to Denver, and that kind of, for other reasons, and then that kind of, we still were going to possibly do stuff, and the guys were going to move out to Denver, but it never ended up working out. But the things that kept falling in line for us, and now I'll pass it to Jim with the kind of the timeline of the people like Doug Hill messaging us and things like that.
Yeah, so Doug Hill's a producer, mixing engineer, has a recording studio called 60 Psycho Hum. He worked on the most recent Helmet album that was released on Sony. He's got credits in, I think, 3 Mastodon records. Recorded all of Scott Kelly's vocals on 2, maybe I think 3 Mastodon records, and everybody knows Mastodon because they're Grammy winners at this point. Yep. One of the albums that was nominated for a Grammy, Doug's in the credits on that. Did a bunch of stuff with guys from Neurosis, and worked. He owned a label for a while and recorded a million punk rock bands. And I've known him for a long time. And as soon as he saw that Emissary was back together, he immediately messaged me and said, "I hope you guys work with me. I hope you hire me to mix the record." Yeah. So we've got Doug Hill mixing the record. Got a guy named Evan Gochnar from Capitol Records mixed the EP version of the Silent Treatment. The guy's, you can look his credits up. He's worked on tons and tons and tons of huge selling records. Got a guy named Jamie King mastering. Evan did the mastering on Silent Treatment, and then Jamie King, who's worked with Between the Buried and Me, and just all these bands doing the mastering. We've got a guy that did some art for Megadeth. A guy named Don Yotomi did the album cover. Amazing, nice. Amazing artwork. Like we fed him our vision. He spent hours on the phone with me. I was talking to him about, Tim and I spent 4 hours on the phone describing all the little things we wanted and the things that we didn't want. And, and he sent us, rough ideas of where he was going visually, and came out with this thing that's just unbelievable. It has not been, the cover has not been released. There's kind of a little piece of it here and there on some merch, but people haven't really seen the album cover yet to the new album. But yeah, all these people just kept hitting me up to whoa, Emissary's back. You want to do this thing? You want to do that thing? And we kind of piggybacked off of Silent Storm a little bit for a couple of shows, and then we were trying to put together an idea for a comeback show, and we got offered opening slot direct support for Tesla on the first night of their tour. This was just a few months ago. That was the tour that was, I think it was cut short after that.
2 dates. Yeah, they only played 2 dates in Oregon, and then they shut it down.
Yeah, Frank, was it Frank got COVID?
Well, Frank and then everyone, I think. Right. Yeah.
So yeah, and that was, and we played well over 1,000 people that night.
Cool.
And then we played Redwood Metal Fest in California, playing with Lich King and Mordred and Blind Illusion. It was an incredible all-day outdoor metal festival, and we were supposed to be this week. We're supposed to be opening for Raven there at the Bossa Nova Ballroom, but there was some issues with our drummer flying in. He has to, because he lives in Alaska, he has to come to Canada, and with all the rules and mandates, and it was just it wasn't going to be able to happen with him. So we tried to get a fill-in drummer in, and realized it wasn't going to happen in time. And there was honestly, I was still recovering from COVID. I had it for about a month. So it was all this up in the air stuff of we were going to be able to make the Raven show. And then Doug Hill actually called me and said, you don't want to burn a bridge with the folks up at the Bossa Nova. You should probably cancel we were 5 weeks out. And he said, you should probably cancel, so that way you can get on, still keep a good relationship with them and maybe get on another show next year. So there's a lot of metal shows that come through the Bossa Nova. So we had to make the judgment call, and broke our heart because we wanted to play that Raven show, but we just weren't going to be able to make it happen in time.